Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became strong early and earned Konoha's respect part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Asuma then lit up a cigarette and smiled. You pass, congratulations. What? Was the collective yell of the group. Simple. You passed my test. What? But how? Naruto asked, still on guard. Let me clarify things for you. Yesterday we talked, what I asked of you. To fail the test intentionally so you would take me as your apprentice. I asked this question to each one of you, so when Hinata and Shino refused and you said, in your own words, the first part of the test was over. During a mission the enemy, or even a said ally can approach you with various kinds of offers. Wealth, power, even your own life, to give you a few examples. When you refused personal offers in the favor of the unity of the team, you proved to be real shinobi. Asuma said, before taking a drag of smoke from the cigarette. Listen kids, a team is stronger as its weakest link. If any of you accepted my offer I'd fail the team. I won't be taking a team that has an uncommitted member. During combat this could mean our deaths. The genins seemed to accept the explanation, as Naruto then raised a hand. Sensei, you said something about first part of the test, what was the second part about? The second part was about your willingness to work together. When you all accepted that you were facing an enemy stronger than you could either attempt to push your limits and risk death in return of recognition, or you could accept your flaws and work with your teammates to survive. Needless to say that the second option was the correct. Now, I will spar each of you individually so I can measure your abilities. I suggest you paying attention to the movements and skills of each teammate, so you could familiarize yourself with him when we go for team training. The first one to spar Asuma was Shino. He attempted several movements using his Kikaichu, but Asuma used Futon Ninjutsu to properly repel them. Noticing that Shino was starting to show signs of chakra exhaustion, Asuma quickly changed the combat to close range, where his taijutsu easily overpowered a defenseless Shino. The next spar was against Hinata. Opting to see the Hyuga era's proficiency at the Juken, he started a taijutsu match. Hinata showed to be talented with the Juken, but Asuma noted that her defensive instance was weak, probably due to Hinata's physical complexion that enhanced her flexibility and speed in exchange for strength and resilience. Observing that it was clear that Hinata wasn't physically able to use the traditional instance of the Hyuga, where rigidness was prioritized over the natural adaptability Hinata had. I'll need to talk with Hiashi about this later. However, the spar Asuma was looking forward the most was against Naruto. He heard great things about the boy and was itching to confirm if those are indeed true. Naruto readied himself, analyzing his opponent. His taijutsu is super strong, he uses Futon Ninjutsu, so my Kaden may be able to defeat him. Naruto leapt backwards, adjusting to a mid-range fight, before flashing hand signs and calling his jutsu, Kaden, Enden, fire release, flame bullet. 5 medium-sized bullets were making his way towards Asuma, who performed the Kaden, Karyu Enden, fire release, fire dragon flame bullet. The flames turned into 3 fire dragons who dispelled Naruto's flame bullets and charged forward, making Naruto leap upwards to dodge the flames. Too slow, Asuma said, appearing in front of Naruto who, in airborne, could do nothing to evade the punch in the gut. Gah! Naruto said, crashing on the ground. Quickly rolling sideways to avoid an axe kick, Naruto performed the Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique. Asuma, who didn't had the time to use a jutsu to avoid the fireball, jumped out of the way of the attack, only to be greeted by another Enden right onto his face. Thinking onto his feet, he performed a seal-less Kawarimi, hiding into the trees and unleashing a barrage of shuriken towards the genin. Using his natural speed and his acrobatic abilities, Naruto managed to avoid the barrage. Throwing a kunai in the direction where the shuriken came from, Naruto forced Asuma to leave his position, landing in front of Naruto. Your ninjutsu is good kid, Now let's see your taijutsu, he said, readying his stance. Naruto nodded before entering a defensive stance. Asuma charged forward, delivering a power blow, hoping to get into Naruto's guard. The genin saw trough that and opted to dodge instead of parrying or blocking the blow. For the next 5 minutes, they spared Asuma relentlessly attacking and Naruto doing his best to not get hit and looking for any openings that Asuma could provide, but he found none. Flawless, is that what a Jonin is like? Naruto was brought out of his musing as Asuma's fist connected to his gut, sending him to the ground. Naruto stayed down for about 10 seconds before jumping back to his feet. You know, kid, you won't win if you don't attack. Naruto glared at Asuma with an impassive face, but deep inside he knew the bearded Jonin was right. Readying himself, he charged forward, attempting to hit Asuma with leg sweeps and uppercuts. However, the Jonin was good, and as Naruto overextended a jab, which Asuma easily avoided, the blonde saw his guard wide open and lost the air of his lungs as an elbow strike from Asuma sent him crashing backwards. Asuma could say he was impressed. He wasn't pulling any punches, unlike he did when he sparred Hinata and Shino. He glanced to the boy who was slowly getting up. Said boy then got into a different stance. His feet were parallel and pointed towards the diagonal. There was no open base, his knees weren't flexed and his hands formed a defensive position at his abdomen level. Shortly, this wasn't any taijutsu style Asuma saw on the leaf. It, at first glance, looked extremely carefree, but Naruto seemed to know what he was doing. So Asuma charged forward, delivering a telegraphed punch to test the genin reaction. Naruto moved his neck, avoiding the punch before giving a kick to Asuma's extended arm. The Jonin studied the blonde movements and he was sure that every martial artist would wince in seeing his movements. Fights like a thug, he thought. However, even not following any school of the martial arts, Naruto's taijutsu was surprisingly effective. The main focus of the taijutsu was clearly evasion, and opening counterattack points. However, instead of forcefully exploiting those counterattacks, Naruto would settle for slowly mining his opponents, using blows to the joints to restrain movement and hitting certain areas in repetition. Asuma presumed that Naruto developed this style by his own, an impressive feat for someone his age, but he could see movements that looked similar to the Hubby, Snake Goken, Strong Fist, and Suken, Drunken Fist styles. Okay Naruto, that's enough, go sit with your teammates. As Naruto properly sat down, Asuma looked down to his team and couldn't help but smile. They did much better than he expected. Well, I'd like to say I'm proud of all of you. I was able to properly evaluate your skills and I tell you, I'm pleased with what I've seen so far. Of course there are some minor things that need work, but if we develop as I expect, I dare say that in a month we will be going to our first C rank mission. Now for things that need work on. First with you Hinata. Your taijutsu is good, but I believe that if you somehow let loose and focus on fluidity instead of rigidness you would be able to get better results. I'll visit your father to ask for permission to change the juken to fit your body type. For now I want you to spar against other styles than the Hyuga. Shino is a good start, since your skill levels are similar. However, I believe that after some time you'll be able to take on Naruto. At the mention of taking on Naruto, Hinata developed a small nosebleed that wasn't noticed by the other members. Hi sensei. Shino, your use of Kikaichu is masterful, however I would recommend you to further improve other areas of your training. I'd start with taijutsu, that is your weak point, but I'd also look at some non-aburame ninjutsu. Okay. Finally you, Naruto. I'd dare to say you are already at Chunin level, but you need more versatility and coverage to your ninjutsu. Your taijutsu is a rather intriguing prospect that benefits from the lack of formal direction, however I'd like to help you to add some fundamentals to improve it. Finally, genjutsu, well I won't lie to you, your genjutsu will never be on the same level as your taijutsu or ninjutsu. You have a good chakra control considering your reserves, but I believe that you'll never get past B rank genjutsu. However, you are easily a target for genjutsu, so I'll also teach you how to dispel high level ones. However, skill-wise I believe you're the strongest rookie in this year's graduating class, despite of what others try to say. Asuma then proceeded to make a training schedule. He would take in the week to drill the team in teamwork and tactics. Also, each member would have a day where they would individually work with Asuma whilst the others sparred against each other and completed personal assignments given by Asuma. Finally, the last weekday would be reserved to the team spend in their clan compound, learning their personal techniques. As Naruto didn't have a clan, it was decided that he would use this final day to work with Asuma. Weekends were reserved for mild personal training and mainly recuperation, since Asuma assigned individual physical trainings that would be difficult for the first few weeks considering they were transitioning from academy students to fully fledged shinobi. The trainings would take place in the afternoon, since the team would use the mornings to complete D-ranked missions. During Mondays, Hinata would train with Asuma, Tuesday was Shino's and Wednesday Naruto's. Thursday was reserved for team training. Finally, Friday was the day the team members would work individually with their clans, but for Naruto it meant another session with Asuma. 2 weeks later, Naruto could state that he was extremely happy in being trained by Asuma. The Jonin always made him work extremely hard, and Naruto knew that it was his obligation to work even harder than expected, because he doubted there would be any other Jonin so willing to teach him like Asuma was. Training with the former guardian 3 times per week, as opposed to his team's 2, made him closer to his sensei as compared to his teammates. Asuma was extremely honest and clearly stated that should he fall on a mission, Naruto would have to take the responsibility to keep his team safe. As for training, the guy was a perfectionist. During taijutsu practice he would make Naruto repeat the same moves 100 times if he believed they weren't good enough. However, Asuma really outshined when teaching futon nature transformation, his specialty. When Naruto found out about his futon affinity 2 years ago during training with Ebisu, he wasn't very happy. He believed that it would be useless in a village that was famous for his employment of Kaden, who held a natural advantage against futon. Boy, he was wrong. It took Asuma 2 hours and a demonstration with his chakra knives to make Naruto's idea about the futon change completely. Now Naruto was extremely glad to have a wind affinity, considering the plethora of uses this nature could have on the battlefield. Naruto's training in futon manipulation was only beginning, as he had yet to properly cut a leaf using his chakra. Naruto was brought out of his musings when he reached his apartment. Asuma gave the team a day off tomorrow as he was pleased with the team progress. Looking to his coffee table, he noticed the 2 scrolls above it: Kaden, Karyudan Fire Release, Fire Dragon Bullet, and Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. Those 2 scrolls were actually forgotten, since he had been busy with training after graduation. Naruto knew it wasn't the brightest of the ideas to attempt to use a fire ninjutsu inside his apartment, so he decided to attempt the 2nd scroll. He read the jutsu description that the Hokage provided. B-ranking clone technique that was developed by Tobarama Senju, the Nadaime Hokage. This jutsu creates solid clones that would only dispel at the user commands or after being hit. This is considered a kinjutsu because of the sheer chakra usage. Should someone attempt to perform this jutsu without proper chakra reserves, he could risk chakra exhaustion and possibly death. Upon dispelling, the clone memories are transferred to the original, making this technique highly suited for information gathering into enemy territory. Naruto's eyes nearly jumped out of his sockets. This jutsu was created by the legendary Tobarama, possibly his favorite Hokage, and could create solid clones. Naruto was too excited that he never bothered to read the death risk or the memory transfer part. He just jumped into the proper instructions for chakra molding and hand signs. Forming a cross-shaped sign, Naruto properly molded his chakra before yelling, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Suddenly 25 copies of Naruto appeared. Poking a clone to see if he was indeed real, which he was, Naruto was amazed. I must talk with Hokage Gigi. Hey, boss. One of the clones called. Yeah, what should we do? With a mischievous grin and a bossy voice he began to give orders. Clean the house, polish the glasses, and dinner better be ready when I get back, he said before heading towards the exit. As he was making his way towards the office, he passed by a certain flower shop. Ino Yamanaka was bored. She couldn't believe she would say that, but she missed the academy. Nothing wrong with her teammates. Shikamaru and Choji had their flaws, a whole lot of flaws, but they were reliable. Also, she enjoyed talking with Kurenai. She was a strict teacher, but everything she did was for her best. Kurenai approached her on her first day as a genin to try to pry off her fangirlish tendencies, and whilst Ino didn't abide of them completely, she was beginning to see that there was life beyond Sasuke. Not seeing the Uchiha since graduation definitively helped too. But she was bored. Why? Lack of eye candy. Choji and Shikamaru were far from attractive. Working in a flower shop was another complication. Every attractive guy that set foot there was already taken or was planning on asking a girl out. Ino sighed. It wasn't like the boy of her dreams would suddenly walk through the door. Ring. The bell announced another customer. Welcome to Yamanaka Flowers, how can I help you? She said, not taking her eyes off the magazine she was reading. I'd like to, Ino. Ino jerked her head upwards to just come face to face with Naruto. In Ino's opinion, Naruto was far from ugly. Actually, when she first saw him 4 years ago at the academy, she thought he was kind of cute. Ino, during the time she was still friends with Sakura, would grade a boy's look. Sasuke obviously was AA+, Naruto by this time was graded by the girls as AB, which was above average. Having Kiba, Shino and Choji in the class didn't do any wonders for the average rating. Even when she and Sakura became rivals, Ino continued with her habit. When Naruto showed up in the genin assignments with a totally different look, his grade just went up to A-, but now, standing face to face with the boy, Ino realized she made a mistake because Naruto Uzumaki was definitively AA+. Naruto, what you doing here? She asked, trying to suppress a blush. Well, I'd like to buy a few potted plants for my apartment, to add a bit of green. Oh, I see. Anything in particular? No. Do you have any suggestion? Yes, I'll show you. Naruto decided to buy a few potted plants, following Ino's recommendations. They talked about lot of things, and Naruto surprisingly enough enjoyed the conversation with a girl that in his own opinion was superficial. So Ino, how are the missions going? Well, D ranks are boring. Today we had to chase the daimyo's wife cat. Tora, the demon cat? Naruto questioned, with Ino giggling at the nickname. Yes. How long did you take to catch him? 2 hours. 2 hours. Naruto yelled. Yes, is that too much? Ino asked, confused by her fellow blonde's sudden outburst. No, is too little. When we chased that demon, Naruto said, emphasizing his last word, we took whole 5 hours to capture him, and that damn cat tore my jacket, broke Shino's sunglasses, and destroyed Asuma's cigarettes. People say about the Kyuubi, but Tora makes it look like a simple bug. Naruto, that's no fun. Some of my clansmen died during the attack. Ino said in a scolding tone. Naruto then realized that he probably crossed a line and was about to apologize when he heard Ino laughing out loud. You should have seen your face, priceless. Naruto first frowned, clearly no happy about being tricked, but soon found himself staring at the smiling Ino. Her smile is pretty, makes you want to protect her. You have a beautiful smile. Naruto noted, causing a light blush to appear on Ino's cheeks. Naruto then noticed a pale pink flower on a basket near the counter. Feeling surprisingly bold, he took the flower, tulip as he would recognize some time later, and handed it to Ino, causing her to blush bright red. A flower for a beauty. What Naruto didn't know is that offering a tulip was a declaration of love. Ino was trying her best to control her emotions. A perfectly fine boy gave her a tulip, and as she looked at him she felt pulled towards his blue eyes. Naruto was having the same thoughts as he glanced and couldn't help but admire the girl in front of him. As the world stopped around them, they leaned forward. Ino was trying her best to control her emotions. A perfectly fine boy gave her a tulip, and as she looked at him she felt pulled towards his blue eyes. Naruto was having the same thoughts as he glanced and couldn't help but admire the girl in front of him. As the world stopped around them, they leaned forward. Same time, at Naruto's apartment. The army of 25 clones was doing their chores. Considering Naruto didn't cleared the house for well, since he moved in, they had a huge amount of work to do, so the clones divided themselves in a group of 20, responsible to clean the house, and a group of 5, to cook Naruto's dinner. This last group decided to prepare a homemade ramen, as Naruto read that instant meals were bad for his health. A clone was responsible to boil the water whilst another one cut the veggies. When the water finally boiled, the clone decided to take the kettle with the water to the sink, but failing to notice that a broom was lying on the floor. As he tripped on the floor and sent a wave of boiling water towards the clone that was cutting the veggies, he could only yell, "Watch out!" The clone that dutifully worked in his duties turned his head curiously, and then his expression changed into horror as the wave went towards him. As the inevitable happened, the clone dispelled, sending his memories to the original. Back at the flower shop. As they leaned closer, they didn't formed any thoughts nor said any words. The moment provided an opening for the kiss to happen, and both decided to go with the flow. In a matter of physical time, not even 5 seconds passed by, but for the blonde duo, it felt like hours. Each centimeter was a mile and each second was an hour, as their noses almost touched. Ino had her first rational thought. She was going to kiss Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto, however, didn't had any thought. He was moving in pure instinct. He actually never kissed a girl, but it felt like his body was moving on his own. He didn't care that he was going to kiss a girl who spent the last 4 years fawning over Sasuke, nor that he actually had any experience of kissing other than the rather graphic scenes that he read in his black book. However, instincts kicked once again when he received the memories of his dispelled clone. Confused by the unfamiliar sensation, Naruto misread the situation, assuming that the memories were actually happening, so he quickly hugged Ino protectively, as he looked around for any signs of danger. After clearing his mind and finally realizing that the memory had something to do with the clones he left at home, he sighed, only to find he was still awkwardly hugging Ino. Releasing the hug, both blondes looked at each other, with blushes evident on their faces. As both of the genins broke eye contact and Naruto decided to end the rather awkward situation. "Well, I gotta see the Hokage, goodbye Ino-chan." "Shit, did I just say Ino-chan?" he said before quickly making his way out of the shop. "Goodbye, Naruto-kun," Ino said to nobody in particular, muttering the last part. Before reflecting on what just happened. "Naruto and I almost kissed, but I like Sasuke-kun, right? I should be glad we didn't kiss, but why I feel so empty." "So what's your opinion about your team so far?" "Well, since Asuma returned from the capital, Hiruzen decided to make an extra effort to reform bonds with his younger son. The Sandaime would make time to play shogi, their favorite pastime activity since Asuma was a kid, and sometimes, like today, they would have dinner together at the Sarutobi's compound. A quiet and peaceful dinner. "Hey old man." That was just interrupted by Naruto. Sighing, the Hokage got up his seat on the table and opened up the door to Naruto. "Hello Naruto, any particular reason to interrupt my dinner?" Naruto then scratched the back of his head and showed some embarrassment, before muttering an apology. "Well, forget that now, what brings you here?" "I completed the Kage Bunshin," he proclaimed with proudness in his voice. As Asuma, who was still sitting on the table hearing the conversation, ears perked up. The Kage Bunshin was a great jutsu, and could help the team a lot. "That's great kid," the heavy smoker said, appearing beside his father. "Hi Asuma-sensei." The blonde greeted. "Well, congratulations Naruto, the Kage Bunshin is a B-ranked jutsu and mastering it is a hard task." The Sandaime spoke up. "Yes, but there's something I noticed. Before going out I left some clones at home doing some chores, then suddenly I felt like I shared one of those clones' feelings and senses. Actually, Naruto, you probably received his memories. Seeing the genin puzzled expression, the Hokage explained further. When a clone dispels, they share their memories with the original, making it a great technique for information gathering, but the scroll I gave you said that, didn't it? Well, I kind of stopped reading it when I heard physical clones. Naruto said, clearly embarrassed about making a fool out of himself in front of the Hokage. The Hokage and his son chuckled at Naruto's embarrassment, and Hiran couldn't help but feel a bit of sad that, despite acting so mature for his age, Naruto was still a kid. The village made him that way with their lack of compassion. Minato, I'm sorry. Well, Naruto, the Kage Bunshin is a good technique to have in your arsenal. It can be used for both combat and espionage. Asuma said. Also, there's a good usage of the technique for training, although it is only reserved for chakra pool powerhouses like you. Tell me, Naruto, how many clones did you make? Hiruzen asked. 25, but I was low on chakra. Well, since clones transfer their memories to the original, you can use them to speed up your training. Hiruzen said, chuckling at Naruto's amazed smile. The level of chakra you put on the clones dictates their durability, although they will always disperse on their being hit. Your concentration also plays a huge role in this, as it can lead to clones performing more complex tasks. Wow, Naruto said in awe, before turning to his sensei. Hey Asuma sensei, I know you gave me a day off tomorrow, but what about some training camp? Well, if I refused, you'd keep pestering nonstop, so let's do this. Meet me tomorrow at the gates, pack for 3 days, because we're going on a training trip. Naruto met with Asuma at the gates of the village. The Jonin decided that he and Naruto would camp and train onto a mountainous region nearby the village. Asuma and the Hokage decided that this area was the best for Naruto training because of the isolation of the area, as they didn't wanted the villagers to bother him or Danzo to get a full look at the boy's abilities. The mountains provided a physical challenge for Naruto to overcome, and the lack of facilities was a plus as well, as Asuma believed that by the end of the 3 days Naruto would be able to perform some low rankings wind ninjutsu, and knowing the blonde, a trail of devastation was most likely. As they reached the destination, Asuma ordered Naruto to make 20 clones to work on the leaf-cutting exercise whilst they sparred in a taijutsu battle. Asuma was still adapting to fight Naruto's taijutsu, and while he already knew that he was supposed to expect the unexpected, it always surprised him the ways the blonde could avoid point-blank strikes and properly counterattack. Naruto still hadn't landed a single hit on his sensei, but he felt that every day he was getting closer. Today he almost got Asuma by pump faking a left kick only to use a roundhouse kick, jumping midair with his right leg. The pattern on those spars was always Asuma getting into offense whilst Naruto defended himself, looking for any openings to exploit. Sadly for him, the Jonin gave none and proceeded the onslaught for hours, until Naruto moves became sloppier due to the muscular fatigue, and Asuma finally landed a striking blow. Good moves, kid. You are improving faster. Asuma commented. Thanks, Asuma sensei. Kid, mind if I ask you something a bit personal? No. It's about your taijutsu style. It's different from everything I've seen my entire life. I assume that you invented it, right? Yes. Any particular reasons? The academy taijutsu didn't fit you. Actually, I never was taught at the academy. Seeing Asuma's puzzled expression, Naruto elaborated further. Well, since you just got back, it's no wonder your father didn't told you yet. You know about my tenant, right? As Asuma nodded, Naruto continued. People mistook me for the Kyuubi and treated me like shit since I could remember. At the academy it was no different. The teachers hated me, and with exception of Iruka sensei, they constantly sabotaged my training. When the Hokage discovered what was happening, he was enraged and wanted to fire the entire teacher corps. However, this day I decided I wouldn't take shit from anyone any further, so I threw myself in training. Hokage-sama was kind enough to hire Ebisu to help me with that. However, I wasn't content, I wanted more. So I decided that I would show everyone at the academy that I didn't needed them, so I studied harder on my own. As things improved, my ego grew bigger, and I shamefully admit that I became arrogant at point of purposefully picking fights so I could hurt people. This style I developed because bullies from the academy and some stupid civilians would try gang up on me despite the Anbu vigilance, and since I was so proud of myself I didn't felt like asking for help every time. I knew that if I was hit I would get beaten, so I trained myself to avoid any kind of damage and exploit their mistakes made in blind rage against the demon brat. Since I was smaller than them I decided to use quickness and agility to overcome their superior strength. I grew even more arrogant to the point that villagers truly feared me, and I felt like enjoying hurting them. But then it happened. Naruto said sadly. It was my 10th birthday and this was a rather touchy subject. When I was younger the Anbu instructed me to avoid going to the streets, so the villagers wouldn't try to hurt me. But this day I felt different, and I decided to go buy some ramen. It was my birthday after all. As I walked in the streets I felt proud of myself, the villagers couldn't hurt me anymore. Then this drunken guy came and started calling me names, offending me, nothing I've already heard before. Usually people would ignore him, but I felt restless, as if I wanted people to really fear me. I backed the guy at an alley and we fought. After 5 minutes I've had defeated him, but I didn't cared. He was already on the verge of unconsciousness, but I kept hitting him. When the Anbu came I've already broken almost every bone in his body and he was just a bloodied mess then. Next day I was called by the Hokage and he used a invisibility jutsu to take me to the hospital. The guy survived but he had severe internal bleeding and the constant hits I've dealt to his head put him on a coma state. But this didn't change my mind, he deserved it. But then I saw her wife sitting by his bedside and crying. Then it hit me. If I kept causing pain and suffering to the other even though they deserved it I would be what they called me, a demon. So from this day onwards I decided that I'd wear the mantle of a demon, so they would leave me alone, but I would never become one, because if I did, everybody that mistreated would have won. Even today I get a look or two of fear, but apparently the Hokage did his best to cover up the story. There are some dumb villagers who still try to corner me on an alley to finish what the Yondaime started, and even if I have all the rights to kill them in self-defense I don't, because I think I might be taking a child of a father, making a widow or making a child fatherless, so I settled for just breaking some bones. I won't lie, it feels somewhat pleasant to see they get what they want, but I will never again take joy from hurting the others. Because I promised myself I wouldn't, and I never break my promises. The 3 days trip was over and Naruto and Asuma were back in Konoha. The blonde progressed greatly, completing the first stage of the wind nature transformation, the leaf cutting and the second stage too, that consisted on splitting the leaf in half. Naruto also took advantage of Asuma's presence to finish the Kaiden, Karyudan fire release, Fire Dragon Bullet, the jutsu on the scroll that was gifted by Ebisu and got to learn the Kaiden, Karyuenden fire release, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet, another B-ranked ninjutsu. The Karyudan and the Karyuenden were somewhat the same technique with some few notable differences. The first technique consisted basically of a flamethrower taking the shape of a dragon. The second technique consisted on expelling from 2 to 4 dragons made of fire and controlling them to slam against the opponent, this technique spending more chakra and having a slightly longer range than the first one. However, the most notable change to Naruto's ninjutsu repertoire was finally adding some futon ninjutsu onto the mix. Asuma taught Naruto C-rank techniques. The futon, Daitapa wind release, Great Breakthrough, a jutsu that consisted on expelling a gust of wind from the mouth and that with enough power and chakra could go as far as destructing a large tree, and the futon, Repusho wind release, Gale Palm, that consisted on creating a gale by clapping the user hands together. Asuma promised to teach Naruto some B-ranked ninjutsu after he finished the 3rd and the 4th stage of wind transformation, but for now he decided to focus on the rest of its team, as he felt that they should progress at the same rate as the blonde Jinchuriki. Naruto totally agreed with that, and whilst working on the 3rd stage of its wind release training, that consisted on cutting a rock by channeling wind-infused chakra in it, he made time to help his teammates improve their own skills. Naruto worked with Shino on developing some cooperation techniques using his newly acquired futon attacks alongside Shino's Kikaichu. Naruto and Shino never were close in the academy, however in this 1 month they worked together, they developed a respect for each other. Naruto at first thought of trying to have Shino to open up, leaving his stoic demeanors, but then he realized that he shouldn't try to change people for his liking and made his best to interact with Shino without intruding too much. Hinata was probably the teammate that mostly benefited of Naruto's help. He helped the Hyuga heiress to improve her taijutsu, but most importantly her confidence and self-esteem. Hinata was still shy and would stutter when nervous, but didn't acted like she would faint every time she saw him. Naruto knew of Hinata's crush on him and made his best to not hurt the girl's heart by acting oblivious, so the Hyuga heiress could get over him on her own. During his spars with Hinata, Naruto was able to grasp the basics of the Juken, going as far as bastardize the style to create one of his own, so he could improve Hinata's training even further. Naruto started to see his team as family, because never in his life he would spend so much time with the same people. He saw Asuma as the closest he had of a father. The Jonin really took interest on him and made sure to teach Naruto as much as he could. His teachings weren't just focused on shinobi skills, but life itself. He would gladly speak of his time serving under the daimyo at the capital and the different parts of the world he got to know. He also told Naruto about his longtime friend Chiraku, a ninja monk that alongside him helped to prevent a coup d'état against the Hokage. They would constantly play shogi, with Naruto winning 20 matches as opposed to Asuma's 17. Hinata was the younger sister Naruto never had, and he, as any good bigger brother, was fiercely protective of her. He would constantly encourage the girl's efforts and took a big disliking to the caged bird seal as he learned about the rift it caused on the girl's family. After being told by Hinata about the Kumo kidnapping incident, he saw Hinata in other eyes. He always believed the Hyuga clan to be arrogant, with Hinata being an exception to that rule, but now he realized that even being noble and wealthy, Hinata had to face her own hardships. Finally, Shino. Shino was kind like a distant cousin that you see once a year on family reunions, but family nonetheless. Hinata was ecstatic about her team. Asuma was a strict teacher, but never belittled her in favor of his naturally more talented teammates, a thing that always happened on her clan when she was compared to Hanabi or Neji. Besides that, Asuma also helped her with her taijutsu as they developed an experimental variation of the Juken that gave Hinata more fluidity. Hinata preferred this new style over the strict traditional form that her clan practiced, but Asuma instructed her to not reveal this new form to her clan yet as it was still a work in progress. Shino was someone Hinata could really relate to, and strategy-wise they would always be paired together as they covered each other's weaknesses. But for Hinata the most important thing was to be alongside Naruto. She really loved him and she felt that as long as she was with him she would be safe. She didn't have the courage to confess her feelings for him, but for now she was happy to be just friends with him. Putting romantic feelings aside, she was always impressed by Naruto's legendary work ethic. The blonde was the first one in, the last one out, always undergoing voluntary training, and yet he wasn't power hungry, as he more than once decided to skip his personal training sessions to help her and Shino with their training. Shino, despite his stoic behavior, was actually very pleased with his team. He knew teamwork and chemistry had a great deal of importance and his team coexisted well. He had combination moves with both his teammates and sensei. He was actually fond of Naruto and Hinata as they didn't look down at him due to his Kikaichu, nor tried to change his personality. Asuma was a good sensei too, always teaching him something new. Asuma was happy with his first month as the Jonin sensei of Team 10. Shino and Hinata, despite their shyness, were attentive and always respected him. He kept finding new methods to train them as he was still learning how to train his genin properly. But working Naruto was a different thing. The blonde was always pushing his limits harder and harder to help his teammates and village, and Asuma felt proud to be a part of his development as a shinobi and as a person as well. 7 years ago, when he left Konoha after breaking up with Kurenai, Asuma envisioned himself becoming a loner, as he threw away his only shot at love. Now, seeing Naruto achieve by himself things that were denied so harshly by the village, on his own Asuma felt himself being able to try to make up for his actions in the past. He started spending more time with his family, and more than once contemplated asking Kurenai for forgiveness, but he was still afraid of being rejected to do it. Naruto was like a son he never asked to have, but now he couldn't be happier to have him in his life, and he hoped that in a near future his son, little brother, would be his best man should Kurenai accept him back in her life. Team 10 was on Hokage office for an important milestone. Today was their first C-rank mission. The 1-month training program by Asuma clearly prepared the team well for anything that should come. Actually, the team was long ready for C ranks, but Asuma decided to hold this up as he feared that by having 2 clan heirs, one of them being already a target for an abduction attempt, and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki could always attract undesired attention. Asuma walked into his father's office, with his team trailing him, Naruto leading the genin, with Shino in the middle and Hinata behind. Team 10 reporting for a C-ranked mission. Asuma said in a formal tone. Very well, let's see what we have, perfect. Hiruzen said whilst looking for a C rank in pile of scrolls. As he opened the scroll, he began to read it aloud. Well, this is a formal mission request by the Merchant Guild of Konoha. Apparently they want a team to head to Tanzaku town to pick some important merchandise and bring it back to Konoha. What kind of merchandise? Asuma asked. Fine silk. Well, we accept the mission. Asuma said before turning to his genins. Pack for 2 weeks, better to be safe than sorry, and meet me at the northern gate in 3 hours. Naruto quickly put together his things on a backpack in less than 1 hour. With his free time he decided to stop by at the Higarashi's weapons to see if his custom-made katana was ready. Naruto didn't focus that much on kenjutsu training during the last month, but he kept doing the exercises that Yugao and Hayate assigned to him, so he felt that having the katana ready for his first mission outside the village was a good idea. As he reached the store he was greeted by a girl wearing a Chinese-style dress with brown hair styled in 2 buns. Welcome to Higarashi's weapons. How may I help you? The girl asked. Hello, I came to see if the order I placed is ready. Okay, what's your name? Naruto Uzumaki. I'll go check at the storage. Feel free to take a look at the products while I'm gone. Naruto then looked around. He had to admit that Higarashi's had an impressive display. Since he had already bought his outfit and weapons during his last trip, he didn't felt like replenishing his stocks, but decided to buy some explosive tags and flashbangs just in case. As he kept glancing around at the store he noticed some slightly different kunais, similar in shape when compared to the regular kunais, but the metal it was made shined a lot, unlike the blackened metal of the regular version. Those are chakra metal kunais. You can flow your chakra through it to add its properties, although you need to know nature transformation to do so. The girl came back, holding a katana. I do. Naruto replied, much to the girl's surprise. How? Aren't you a freshly minted genin? Yes, but I had a good teacher. Naruto said, smiling. I wish I had your luck. The girl said, sighing. Why? Your sensei is a total lazy who usually arrives 4 hours late to the training. Meanwhile, a silver-haired Jonin sneezed while reading his orange book of smut. I think I forgot something. Is it my team training? Nah, I would remember that. He mused before resuming his reading. No, but I wish my team was a bit more normal. I have the 2 weirdest guys of Konoha in my team. Is that bad? Naruto asked with a look of solidarity. As in a clue, a boy around Naruto's age appeared. The boy was, well, Naruto couldn't find a word to describe the boy. He had huge black eyes, a black shiny bowl-cut hair, and wore a green spandex. However, his most prominent detail were his eyebrows. They weren't some eyebrows, they were the eyebrows. Yush Tenten, would you like to join me on my youthful laps around the village to brighten our flames of youth? Not now, Lee, I'm busy. Tenten said, giving a, this answers your question. Look to Naruto, who just winced in sympathy. Sorry, I believe we weren't properly introduced, Lee said, looking to Naruto. I am Konoha's beautiful green wild beast, Rock Lee. Lee exclaimed, giving his nice guy pose. Naruto's sweat dropped at Lee's antic before composing himself. Nice to meet you, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. He said, extending his hand, offering Lee a handshake that the genin quickly accepted. Tell me, Naruto, would you like to have a youthful spar? Lee asked, only to be cut off by Tenten. Don't bother him, Lee, she said before turning to Naruto and handling him the katana. Your order is ready, it's a very beautiful sword, you use kenjutsu. Yes, I've been training under Hayate Gecko for a month now. Naruto explained. I see, would you like anything else? Actually yes, I will take 10 explosive tags and 3 flashbangs, also I will buy a set of the chakra metal kunais. Naruto said before turning to Lee. About our spar, I'm leaving on a mission today, but we should definitively spar sometime. I usually hang around training ground 14, so you can always look for me there. Naruto said before paying Tenten and leaving the store. Naruto was admiring his new katana while he waited for his teammates. He was early since he packed up quickly. The katana had the traditional shape, the only notable thing being the slightly dark-colored metal the sword was made, being a mid-tone between black and gray. The handle was a simplistic black one, with bronze engravings. Basically a good katana, that stood into the effective but not flashy category. He was brought out of his musings as he heard a male voice. Yo, Naruto. Naruto turned only to see Choji waving to him. Hey Choji, what's up, man? Naruto greeted his friend back with a fist bump. Nothing too much, man, just coming back from AD rank outside the village. I see, so where's Shikamaru and Ino? Choji opened his mouth to speak only to be interrupted by an angry female voice. Choji, you left us behind, damn it. That was Ino and she was angry. However, after noticing who Choji was talking to, she quickly changed tones. Hi, Naruto-kun, she said in a much calmer and sweet voice. Hi Ino-chan. Naruto greeted back, causing his fellow blonde to blush with his use of the affectionate term. Ino, Choji, you guys are troublesome. Shikamaru said, joining the group, before turning back to Naruto. Sup Naruto, he said, greeting the blonde in another fist bump. I'm fine, how you doing Shikamaru? Naruto asked. Tired, those missions are troublesome. The Nara proclaimed, causing the rest of his team and Naruto to sweat drop. Shikamaru, everything is troublesome to you. A raven-haired woman in her mid-20s said. She was extremely beautiful and her red eyes were extremely exotic. And you are, she said, turning to Naruto. Actually she knew who he was, but she asked him out of formality. Naruto Uzumaki, pleased to meet you. Naruto said, offering his hand for a handshake. Nice to meet you Naruto, I'm Kurenai Yuhi, Jonin sensei of Team 8. She introduced herself, shaking Naruto's hand. Hey Naruto, what are you doing later? Kurenai said she would treat us to lunch, would you mind tagging along? Ino asked. Please say yes. I'd love to. Naruto began, causing Ino's face to lit up, but I can't, I'm leaving for a mission today. Naruto explained. Oh, I see, Ino said sadly. Naruto, you're on Asuma's team, right? Kurenai asked, proceeding as Naruto nodded in affirmative. How are you finding things so far? Kurenai, whilst still angry at Asuma, still had a great deal of curiosity and even some leftover admiration to the bearded Jonin. Oh, it's great, Asuma-sensei is great and my team is nice too. Actually today we're leaving in our first C rank. Naruto explained happily. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at this. Aren't you a bit inexperienced for this? Usually genin teams wait 2 months before going for C ranks. That was more a statement than an actual question. Yes, but Asuma-sensei trained us, and, Naruto said, before flashing one of his rare true smiles, causing Ino to blush and Kurenai and the rest of the team to smile too. He said he trusts us. I see. Good luck your mission then. Let's go team, Kurenai said. Choji and Shikamaru again fist bumped Naruto and Ino, much to her team and Naruto's surprise gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, causing Naruto to blush, before whispering for him to be careful. The trip to Tanzaku was quite uneventful, as the group didn't had any problems of any sorts. When they reached Tanzaku town the genin were marveled. It was smaller than Konoha but much more vibrant. After helping the Ichirakus and buying his shinobi apparel, Naruto still had about 30,000 ryo to spend, so he decided to go shopping. It's not every day that he had the chance to visit a different town. At Konoha, civilian merchants would always overprice or even refuse to sell to him. He countered that using his modified version of the henge, that made superficial changes instead of casting just an illusion. However, he still disliked buying from the civilians as he would be funding their business. So with his day off, as the silk shop that had the merchandise was already closed, Naruto decided to buy some civilian and some formal outfits as he might need them sometime. He was making his way towards the shopping district when he stopped dead in his tracks at the sight of a casino. Might as well give it a try, Naruto said before entering the building. 1 hour later and 40,000 ryo richer, Naruto finally went shopping. He bought some plain civilian clothing and 2 fine yukatas. While still having 50,000 ryo to spend, he decided to shop for gifts for his team. For Asuma he got a cigarette pack imported from the land of tobacco, for Shino a highly updated bug encyclopedia, and for Hinata a big supply of gourmet cinnamon buns. After giving his presents to his greatly pleased teammates, Naruto revised his accounts. He, despite all his spending, closed the day with a 5,000 ryo profit. Well, I guess I should gamble more often. Team 10 was midway on his way back to Konoha. They've been traveling for 4 days so far, carrying the silk back to Konoha. The silk was distributed on 3 large metal crates, that the Naruto clones dutifully carried. They weren't having problems so far as the presence of a Jonin strongly discouraged common bandits to attack the team. However, they were being followed. Naruto, Hinata, Shino, keep the crates safe, Asuma said before a group of 20 men jumped from above, circling the team. Using his censoring abilities, Naruto said. The 4 in front of Asuma are Chunin level, the rest is low genin. Well, leave the Chunin to me, Hinata. Protect the crates, Naruto and Shino, please subdue the others. As the team took their stances, the fight begun. Hinata dutifully knocked out 2 bandits that were stupid enough to attack first. Asuma kept the 4 Chunin at bay, whilst using an opening to knock one of them out. Meanwhile, Shino and Naruto's bug dispersion combo made short work of 8 unaware bandits. As the fight progressed, Team 10 clearly was sailing away as the victors. The crates remained untouched and the genin level bandits were knocked out. Of the 4 Chunin, only 1 remained and he was being cornered by Asuma. You know, I may have lost the battle, but I'll win the war, he said, throwing a handful of dirt into Asuma's eyes, temporarily paralyzing the Jonin. Then instead of fleeing he charged quickly at Hinata, with full intent to kill. Naruto watched the scene and realized that Hinata wouldn't be able to defend herself in time. He also couldn't get in the way as he lacked speed. Stealing his resolve, he knew he could only do one thing to save Hinata. Getting one of the chakra metal kunais from his pouch, he infused wind chakra onto it, before throwing towards the enemy charging at Hinata. The speeded up kunai pierced the enemy neck, leaving a gruesome trail of blood on the ground. The bandit was dead before his body hit the ground as his neck was severed by the attack, and his head was almost detached from the rest of his body courtesy of the wind nature chakra. Asuma recovered to see a paralyzed Hinata looking away from the deceased enemy body, clearly shocked. Shino stood far from his 2 teammates, still shaken by the turn of events and his inability to help his teammates. Finally, Naruto was kneeling on the ground staring at the enemy. Asuma deduced that this was his first kill due to his shaking. As Hinata started crying and Shino went to console her, Asuma heard muttering from Naruto. I killed him, I killed him, I killed him, Naruto kept repeating as in trance. Asuma quickly disposed of the bodies with a fire jutsu, before glancing at Naruto again. Naruto's clearly shaken by his first kill. I wish I could talk to him now, but we're still on mission. Hey Naruto, walk with me for a second, Asuma said as the team finished reporting the success of its first C-rank mission to the Hokage. Okay, Naruto said in a emotionless tone. It hurt Asuma to see that kids had to kill so early, and yet more how killing affected Naruto's confident personality. The duo kept walking, ignoring the hated glares from the villagers. Asuma was beyond angry with the way the boy he began to see as his son was treated, but Naruto didn't seem to care. He was already used to it and still thinking about his first kill. They stopped at the Hokage Mountain Monument, sitting at the Sandame's head. So, how are you feeling? I killed him, Asuma-sensei. I took a man's life. I perhaps made another innocent kid an orphan like myself. Yes, you killed him, but you liked killing him. No, Naruto said with a weak voice tone. Naruto, we're shinobi, we have to kill, it's part of our job, you did well. But still, I've been unable to sleep for 2 days, every time I close my eyes I see him. I didn't even knew his name. Well, when I first killed I was your age, I threw up and had nightmares for weeks. Feeling sadness for taking a life is what makes us human, not tools. Asuma explained. But still, Naruto tried to argument. Naruto, if you didn't intervene Hinata would be dead, so tell me, who deserved to die? A 12-year-old girl on her first mission outside the village, or a bandit who wouldn't feel guilt in killing? Naruto's answer both surprised and made his Jonin teacher proud. Nobody deserves to be killed without having the chance to defend themselves. Asuma smiled at the genin. But the world isn't fair, remember that, he said before taking a pause. The greatest shinobi in history had to kill, but how they handled it made them really special. The Sandame Raikage, hailed as the strongest Raikage in history, once fought 10,000 enemies alone for 3 straight days. He died in this battle, but probably killed thousands of enemies that day. Why he kept fighting after killing all those people? Because by doing this he allowed his comrades to live. The Yondaime Hokage was the biggest hero of Konoha. During the Third Shinobi War he decimated the forces of Iwa in a single day. I knew him, and he wasn't a sadistic killer, so why did he abide of his values and killed thousands of shinobi, making orphans and widows in the process? Because it was needed. By doing this he prevented his fellow Konoha shinobi from dying unnecessary deaths. Naruto, the world we live is sick. I don't expect you ever to feel happy to kill someone despite they deserved or not. But we're shinobi, we must always think of the best for our village. Death and killing are always part of shinobi life. How you deal with those feelings determines your value as a shinobi and determines the success of your missions. If you fail a mission you would be putting your friends and your village in danger, so you must get used to killing, so your precious people wouldn't die. I'm not saying that it's right or ideal, but this is how we are forced to live. Naruto was speechless at Asuma's display of wisdom. All he said was true, and whilst he killed an enemy he did that to protect Hinata. If Hinata was killed he would be even more shaken. Naruto then realized, there are no ideals on the shinobi world, and the only way you have to keep yourself and your loved people safe is to be getting stronger. So he vowed to become the strongest and perhaps someday change the dynamics of the world. He was broken off of his thoughts as Asuma patted his shoulder, offering him one of his cigarettes. As Naruto raised an eyebrow at the Jonin, he explained. Old enough to kill, old enough to smoke. Naruto knew this was the way Asuma had to bond with his important people, and knowing he was one of those important people made Naruto happy. Thanks Asuma-sensei, Naruto said before accepting the cigarette and displaying his first sincere smile since he came back. The month after Asuma and Naruto's talk at the Hokage Rock was pretty uneventful. Team 10 kept progressing, with Shino almost mastering the Mushi Bunshin no Jutsu, insect clone technique, and Hinata making steady progress with her Jukin variant. Naruto took some time to help and bond with his teammates. As Shino's technique was an Aburame clan's secret jutsu, Naruto wasn't able to help very much, only giving him a few pointers. Hinata, however, greatly appreciated Naruto's help. Naruto, according to Asuma, was at least low Chunin level in taijutsu, and his natural adaptability in reading other styles and quickly developing counters helped with the defensive part of Hinata's taijutsu. Besides that, Naruto was able, by analyzing Hinata's Jukin, to develop a bastardized version of her style. Naruto knew that he would never be able to use it in an actual combat as he couldn't see the opponent's tenketsu, but this was useful with Hinata's training as she was keeping her new style a secret from her clan. Naruto himself developed greatly, as he used his new shadow clone method to multiply his progress. He completed the third stage of the futon manipulation and was now, by Asuma's words, a accomplished futon user. Asuma kept his promise and taught Naruto a B-rank jutsu. The futon, Shinkugyoku, wind release, vacuum sphere. The jutsu name was very self-explanatory. By expelling futon chakra through his mouth, the user fired vacuum projectiles at his opponent, causing fatal damage. Asuma explained to Naruto that despite the sphere in his name, the futon, Shinkugyoku, can be released in cylindrical shape as well, covering a bigger directional range, but losing potency and some reach. After the third stage there was no other formal stages, but Asuma suggested an exercise where Naruto should cut the flow of a river using wind-natured chakra in his palms. Naruto managed to cut a river and now was working in cutting a waterfall. However, during the last few weeks Naruto set aside his futon training to focus on his taijutsu with Asuma. Seeing that Naruto's flexibility and adaptability were both the strongest and weakest points of his taijutsu, Asuma worked in adding few of his own defensive moves to this style, whilst keeping Naruto's acrobatic and unconventional moves and evasions. The result was a completely new style, the Suriken, slicing fist. The key component of this new style was incorporating Asuma's chakra blades in it, giving Naruto a literal cutting edge above his opponents. The chakra blades were Asuma's personal present to Naruto after he learned that the boy never celebrated his birthday because of the fox hunts the village organized. Naruto explained that whilst he could defend himself, he would usually stay at home sleeping as he felt that during this particular day, the shinobi and civilians would be even more susceptible to hostile attempts against him, and he didn't wanted to get his few precious people, like the Ichirakus and Konohamaru, in it. Asuma was extremely angry with the villagers' behavior and promised that Naruto would never ever need to hide during his own birthday again. The Suriken was a still work in progress, as Naruto had still to master the fundamentals of Asuma's training and had yet to properly perform the Hine, flying swallow, that would be the style's main offensive weapon, as the extended edge of the knives could easily surprise the opponent. During this 1-month period Naruto took an interest for non-smut books and began to read them. Upon one of his diggings at the Hokage library he found an old story book about shinobi clans. Much to his surprise, he found out that the Uzumaki was a clan in Uzushiogakure. Questioning the Hokage, he learned that Uzushiogakure and Konohagakure had an extremely close relationship, with Mito Uzumaki being the Shodime's wife, also the Uzumaki and Senju being distant blood relatives, and finally with the Uzumakis providing much of Konoha's barrier ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. The Hokage also explained that the Uzumaki clan symbol was emblazoned in most of Konoha's Chunin and Jonin outfits as a symbol of friendship between the two villages. Naruto briefly remembered studying about Uzushiogakure in the academy's history classes, but the Uzumaki name was never mentioned, probably due to the extremely professional teachers that didn't know the difference between a kunai and a scroll, as Naruto often called them. This knowledge prompted Naruto to do a mass sweep on all the available history books Konoha had. After some book grinding with the help of the shadow clones, Naruto discovered that Uzushiogakure was famed for its fuinjutsu, being destroyed by a joint attack of Kiri, Iwa and Kumo, that feared their alliance with Konoha. Naruto was, of course, sad in knowing that his ancestors' village was destroyed by a coward act like that, despite not doing actually anything to deserve their hate. In his mind, Naruto also made a relation of his and Uzushiyogakure's histories as similar ones. As both him and the village were hostilized by things that actually weren't under his control. A younger Naruto would probably have sworn to avenge his clan's village, but the matured Naruto knew better. Avenging Uzushiogakure wouldn't rebuild the village nor bring back the people that were killed in his downfall. Also, this happened at least 30 years ago, before the start of the Third Shinobi World War, and if he attacked any of those villages he would be dooming people who had nothing to do with Uzushiyogakure's destruction with death. If he really felt pleasure in doing that, he would be no better than the civilians that he so much despised. So Naruto made a choice: he would restore the Uzumaki clan to its greatness. And this time they wouldn't be taken down so easily. Keen on this goal, he asked the Sandaime to teach him Fuinjutsu, as it was the trademark of the Uzumaki clan. The Hokage explained that his duties made him unable to properly focus on Naruto, but explained that his pupil, Jiraiya of the Sannin, would be coming to Konoha shortly. He would ask him to teach Naruto. In order to cut Jiraiya's work, Hiruzen gave Naruto calligraphy books, which would be the base of his Fuinjutsu, as it required perfect writing, and a basic scroll on Fuinjutsu that covered basic concepts like sealing scrolls and explosive tags. Needless to say that after this, Naruto pretty much isolated himself from the outer world and diligently worked in his calligraphy, only leaving his apartment to training and his traditional FNRF, Friday night ramen fun. Despite his diligence and his sheer amount of clones, Naruto, due to his several trainings and studies, wasn't able to attend any more kenjutsu practices with Hayate. The blonde knew that sometime in the future he would have actually to set a proper focus on a goal, instead of trying to accomplish all of his objectives simultaneously. Right now he felt that kenjutsu wasn't something that important, but he promised himself to work to catch up with his kenjutsu after finishing the Suriken and properly learning Fuinjutsu. Regarding his team and his previous talk with Asuma, Naruto felt like him and his teammates matured greatly. Asuma liked the team performance on its first C-ranked mission, and decided to prepare during a month to properly complete any kind of C rank they might face. The killing aspect was always worrying, as Asuma was training a group of 12-year-olds, so in a risky but successful move, he got Naruto to lecture his teammates about his experience on the first kill. The move could have backfired greatly, but by making the blonde genin confide his feelings to his teammates, not only Naruto was able to ease his mind but also helped his team to prepare to a situation where they would have to kill. Team 10 reporting for a C-ranked mission, Hokage-sama. Asuma said in a somewhat formal manner. Well, I was wondering where you would come. The Hokage said, unsurprised, before taking a scroll of his robes and throwing it to Asuma. This is a formal request from the Wasabi family, of the land of tea, one of the countries that share a border with the land of fire. Apparently the Wasabi family is fighting for the control of Dagarashi port, an important harbor city, with his rivals, the Wagarashi family. In order to prevent unnecessary bloodshed, one of the land of tea daimyo's ministers decided to organize a race that would define the controller of the city. Therefore your mission is to escort the Wasabi runner and prevent any hostile attempts taken by the Wagarashi. The scroll states that it's probable that the Wagarashi hired shinobi, making this a high C rank, if not a B ranked mission. The Hokage explained, causing Hinata and Shino's eyes to widen and Naruto to gulp nervously. Usually I would assemble a team of Chunin to this mission, but I already dispatched a squad of 5 to help Team 7 with their mission on the Land of Waves, and I honestly have great faith in this team, so I'm making an exception here. Asuma glanced towards his team, with Naruto, Sino and finally Hinata nodding their heads. We accept the mission. The 1-week travel to Land of Tea happened without any real inconvenience and Team 10 soon reached his destination. Dagarashi port was an important harbor town, and was prospering greatly due to being a port that had great influx of both land of fire and land of lightning merchants selling their wares here. Dagarashi port was basically consisted of 2 large islands and a third small one, interconnected by bridges. The Wagarashi family had its base on the eastern island whilst the Wasabi family lived on the western island. In the third and smaller island, that housed the Todoroki Shrine, an important landmark of the town. The Wasabi estate was rather big, putting on Konoha standards Naruto would bet that it rivaled the Akamichi estate, the third biggest in the village, losing to the Hyuga and Uchiha compounds. However, despite the size, the estate wasn't over lavish like the Hyuga compound was. Of course it was luxurious, but it didn't cross the line of being superfluous. The team was eagerly received by Joriko Wasabi, the patriarch and founder of the Wasabi family. Joriko was a man on his late 50s, who had Joriko's slight tanned skin, gray shaggy hair and light black-colored eyes. He welcomed the team to a meeting room that followed the pattern of the building, huge and comfortable but not lavish. "I thank you for coming so promptly. You had any trouble at the road?" the patriarch asked. "No, we didn't face any kind of trouble," Asuma replied. "Well, I'm thankful for that, but now let's get to business," Joriko said firmly. "Recently we managed to gather some intel into the enemy's strategy. They hired a Genin 3-man cell from a megacure that is led by a Jonin from the same village." "I see. Any information about the name of the Jonin?" "Unfortunately, no. Now concerning our internal affairs, the daimyo is doing everything he can to grant the victory to the Wagarashi, so we expect him to be a nuisance to the fairness of the race as well." No offense Joriko-sama, but he's the daimyo, so why he doesn't just throw shit in the air and relinquish the control to the Wagarashi? Naruto asked, trying to be polite. "Well, he's totally corrupt, but being tyrannical is always not well regarded, so to not be seen as a tyrant by the people of Dagarashi Port, I believe he's giving us a chance," Joriko explained. "Daimyo of the land of tea," Asuma mumbled to himself. Ichiro Oda. "Joriko-san, is the current daimyo Ichiro Oda?" "Yes. Sorry, but I don't think he's corrupt." As Joriko and the rest of Team 10 raised their eyebrows, Asuma proceeded. "I served for 7 years on the 12 Guardian Ninja of the Fire Daimyo, so I attended several of those formal meetings with daimyos from the elemental nations. Due to the proximity of the nations and the important trade value of the tea that your country provided, the meetings between the daimyo of the Land of Fire and Land of Tea were held each 2 months. Doing a quick math, I attended a total of 42 meetings with Ichiro Oda, usually being confined with him for several hours. My point is that during those meetings Oda usually came out as a very polite and humble person, and I don't think that was an act," Asuma explained, impressing the meeting room with his knowledge. "So what you're saying is that," Joriko said, only to be cut off by Naruto. "Counselors," Naruto said before realizing his gaffe and casted an apologetic look to Joriko, who just nodded, signaling him to continue. "I think that some of his counselors might be doing those acts behind his back." Naruto finished his reasoning. The blonde genin had a deep knowledge of this. He was extremely close to Hokage, and early in his years he observed the Sandaime in several meetings. The man was fair, just and yet commanding, all of the qualities a good leader should have, whilst by observing the elders, the civilian council and even some shinobi clans, he noted that they acted totally different to the Sandaime image. Naruto was brought out of his musings as he heard the voice of Asuma. "I believe Naruto might be correct. During those meetings I noted that some of Oda's ministers and counselors acted in a dubious manner." "Wow, that's a lot to take in," Joriko exclaimed before glancing towards Asuma and Naruto and questioning them. "Do you have any suggestion for this issue?" Asuma took his turn to speak. "I believe we should directly talk to the daimyo about this. If somehow a fight breaks in between my team and Wagarashi's agents, I believe the corrupted ministers can somehow distort the facts to weaken your political position in Dagarashi." "I see. A couple of years ago Oda offered me a job in his personal guard. I could use this offer to be able to meet him in private and tell him to personally attend the race so attempts to sabotage the race can be discouraged. Asuma explained, causing Naruto and Joriko to nod. The rest of the team also nodded. So it's decided. Tomorrow morning I will leave to the capital and convince the daimyo. I will be gone for 1 week, so I will be putting Naruto in charge of the mission. Any objections? As the team promptly agreed with the choice, causing Naruto to smile happily as his teammates trusted him, the plan was set on motion. The next day Naruto woke and had a quick meeting with Asuma before he left for the capital of the Land of Tea. The meeting lasted about 1 hour, during which Asuma explained the leadership role to Naruto and assured him about his trust in said boy's abilities. After the meeting was over, Naruto met his team. He decided to do some scouting alongside his team should the Wagarashi tried to make an ambush near the Wasabi compound. After the recon was complete, Naruto and his team were making their way to their respective rooms, but they were stopped by a servant who said that Joriko requested Naruto's presence in the meeting room. Getting back into the vast room, Naruto was greeted by Joriko, who sat in a ceremonial tea table that consisted of 2 embroidered futons and a fine wood table that stood only about 20 centimeters above the ground. Above the table there was a teapot with boiling tea, who Naruto deduced that was just ready and 2 teacups cups. Taking the gestured seat, Naruto addressed the leader. Joriko-sama, you asked to see me. Yes, I indeed asked. It's regarding your mission. I just received more detailed intel about the shinobi the Wagarashi hired. He said before handling Naruto 4 separate papers. The genin then analyzed the intel. Oboro Amada, male genin from Omegakure. Spiky brown hair and dark eyes. Wears yellow stitched jumpsuit, an aim Hitai to rebreathe and a white sash around his face with eye holes cut out. Mubi Katabuchi, male genin from Omegakure. Spots the aim Hitai 8, yellow stitched jumpsuit, rebreathe and a white sash that covers his upper face, leaving his right eye covered. Kagari Sugimura, male genin from Omegakure. Spiky brown hair. Spots the aim Hitai 8, yellow stitched jumpsuit, rebreathe and has a white sash in his upper head covering his eyes. Those 3 were genin, and, according to the mission data they had registered, weak ones. The last paper however caught Naruto's attention. Aoi Rokusho, Jonin from Omegakure. Naruto had already heard this name before, and he suspected where he heard it. His assumption were confirmed when he opened his bingo book. Aoi Rokusho, wanted by Konoha for stealing the Raijin no Ken, sword of the Thunder God, the sword that originally belonged to the Nadaime Hokage Tobarama Senju and killing 2 Anbu, besides torturing another shinobi. Appearance: wavy, neck length, green hair, purple eyes, fair skin, stands 5 feet 10 inches tall, 182.5 centimeters. Affiliation: Konohagakure no Sato. Former, Nukenin. Rank: Chunin. Bounty: alive, 750,000 ryo. Konohagakure no Sato. Dead, 500,000 ryo. Konohagakure no Sato. Naruto's eyebrows raised and his eyes widened slightly. He handled the bingo book to Joriko, who after reading the entry on the book had the same reaction as Naruto. Naruto-kun, that changes a lot of things. He said before turning to one of his servants, tell Idate I called him here. After few minutes the man Naruto presumed was Idate showed up to the meeting room. Idate had black hair, tied in a spiked ponytail and gray eyes. He wore a plain white long-sleeved shirt with a blue sleeveless vest above it. He also had blue shorts that matched his vest. Naruto would guess that the man was no older than 16. Idate-kun, meet your escort, Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha. Idate leered at the Konoha Hitai before putting out a clearly fake smile. Pleased to meet you. Naruto-kun and I were talking about the enemy shinobi, when we learned this. He said throwing the open bingo book to Idate. Idate's expression soon changed from the fake smile to anger, and then to utter terror. He continued to look at the book for a few minutes. Naruto could clearly see his eyes widening, and his mouth gaping, as the man tried to form words in an unsuccessful manner. Then he finally managed to blab a few words, and if weren't for the chakra that Naruto concentrated in his ears, he wouldn't be able to comprehend them. Shit. I need to flee, he said with a terrified expression. Naruto glanced around the room and saw that Joriko had a sympathetic expression. Is there something I don't know? Naruto inquired. No, we've told everything you should know, Joriko replied nervously. Naruto wasn't convinced, so trying his best to emulate the Asuma's tone of voice that would subconsciously send an "I'm cool but don't keep shit away from me" message, Naruto insisted. Joriko-sama, we were hired to safely escort Idate-san here during the race. If you keep things away from me, you will only be threatening the safety of Idate. Besides that, Naruto said, leaking some killing intent to emphasize his next point. If my team gets hurt because of something you've hidden from us, well, let's say that Idate's safety won't be your only concern. Actually, I might add that if you get on my bad side, anyone's safety will be the last of your concerns, Naruto said in a serious and somewhat darker voice, before shifting again to a fake cheerful tone. So I'm going to ask again, there's something I don't know. You see, Joriko replied nervously before glancing towards an equally terrified Idate, who nodded. Idate-kun here was a shinobi of Konoha once, he developed only to be cut by Idate's voice. It's my story. I believe I should be the one to tell him. I was a genin of Konoha, but I failed the Chunin exams with my team, and because of some rules, we failed and forbidden of taking part of another Chunin exams. I was outraged, but then my academy instructor said that if I managed to steal the Raijin no Ken and a forbidden scroll, I would be acknowledged with the rank of Chunin. I did as he told, but he betrayed me and almost killed my brother. After that I had to flee Konoha and live as an outlaw. Until Joriko-sama took me under his wing at the Wasabi clan. Needless to say that this academy instructor name is Aoi Rokusho, Idate said in a mix of sadness, anger and most of all fear. I see, if you're worried about me ditching you to Konoha, you have my promise that I won't do anything. Now what I really want to know is about Rokusho's skill set. Is there anything that makes him stronger? When he taught me at academy he was a regular instructor, he was good with throwing weapons but nothing above average. But now he has the Raijin no Ken, and this sword makes him invincible. How so? Naruto asked curiously. It's a chakra blade, so he can perform jutsu with them, besides it was once wielded by the Nadaime, what ensures the quality of the sword? Well, now we only have to make sure he won't be able to use the blade then, Naruto said confidently before getting up. I'll give my team those reports. During the next 4 days the team escorted Idate while he trained for the race. Naruto had to admit that the former shinobi was extremely fast, would easily defeat him in a race, a notable feat as Naruto recognized himself at the top tier regarding speed when compared to other academy graduates. Those 4 days were extremely tense because Naruto knew that word of his team arrival would come to the Wagarashi and they would probably attack soon. Naruto during those 4 days was secretly worried. He didn't had much information of the Raijin no Ken sword, but by the quick description Idate gave him he knew that he would face some serious trouble. Naruto, when strategizing with his, decided that in case of an enemy attack Shino and Hinata would handle the genin whilst he would face Aoi Rokusho alone. The team obviously protested as they didn't wanted to see him fighting alone against a Jonin opponent, but Naruto remembered that if he went to fight the genin team alongside them Idate would be vulnerable, and if he decided to engage Aoi with his team help he would be putting them on harm's way and still leaving Idate vulnerable. The team was escorting Idate back from his training run near a cliff, surrounded by sea when Naruto felt 4 chakra signatures trailing them. They're here, he said before turning to Shino. Shino, you're now the leader. You and Hinata should escort Idate to safety. I will engage Aoi here. Shino just nodded, before taking off, leaving Naruto alone. Not even a minute later, the enemy shinobi showed up. Look what we have here, boys. The kid's playing the hero. Go after the target. I'll kill him in a very painful way. Aoi said, grinning. Naruto stared at the three AIM genin leaving the forest towards the direction Shino and Hinata went. Please be fine, guys. Naruto thought to himself before turning towards his opponent and entering battle instance. I must say, or you're very brave or you're very stupid to face a Jonin alone like that. Idate commented, causing Naruto to chuckle. I'd say I'm a bit of both. Naruto said, unsheathing his katana and holding it in a reverse grip. Well, don't worry, when I'm finished people only will see the fool in your lifeless body. Aoi said before unsealing a umbrella and throwing it upwards. Jiro Senbon shower. The thrown umbrella started to rotate quickly and released a rain of Senbon covering all directions. Futon. Daitapa wind release. Great breakthrough, Naruto called before breathing a gust of wind that deflected the Senbon directed towards him. Taking the opening, Naruto rushed forward. Mikazuki no Mai, dance of the crescent moon, then the blonde Jinchuriki jolted in a burst of speed, creating afterimages in the process and penetrating Aoi's guard. Aoi used a kunai to block a point-blank range attack on his front. To his surprise, Naruto just vanished before jumping from behind, with his katana in a slicing motion. With quick reflexes, Aoi did a backflip and used his umbrella that was strapped on his back to block the incoming strike. Having failed his offensive, Naruto quickly withdrew to a mid-range distance, where he felt more comfortable. Aoi noticed this. Oh, you're not running away, he said before throwing the umbrella that he used to block the katana strike above and yelled. Jiro Senbon shower. This time the umbrella had even more Senbon, which had a purple color, and rotated faster. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Is that poison? This time it is also spinning quicker too. I won't be able to deflect them like I deflected the others. The Jinchuriki then used the cross hand seal to form two clones, which propelled the original upwards. Then the real Naruto flashed the tiger, ox, dog, rabbit and snake hand signs consecutively and started to spin wildly. Futon. Kaden Daitapa, wind release. Rotating great breakthrough. The original Naruto used the momentum he got from the clones to increase his rotation speed and released his jutsu in a manner that could provide a uniform shield around him. It was his very own personal form of defense. The new jutsu worked perfectly as he repelled all of the Senbon. Landing on his feet, Naruto glanced to the clearly impressed Aoi and once again took the offensive. Kaden. Karyu Enden, fire release. Fire dragon flame bullet. Naruto then manipulated his chakra into two flame dragons, whom charged towards Aoi. The new Kennen responded with his own jutsu. Suiten. Sujinheki, water release. Water formation wall. Aoi molded his chakra into an pure water wall. The fire dragons collided with the wall and disappeared. Not bad at all. But the child's play ends now. Feel honored that I had to use my full strength to beat you. Aoi said, before drawing a swordless hilt from his belt. The hilt was aqua blue and his design resembled a vajra. As Naruto raised his eyebrow in question, Aoi snarled and began to channel chakra into the hilt. Then a yellow lightning started to come off from the hilt and started to take form of a sword. Raijin no Ken, the sword you stole from Konoha. Weaklings like Konoha shinobi had no use for a sword like that. With this sword I am invincible. Aoi said in an arrogant manner. Well, my sensei says that a sword is as good as its swordsman. Today I'm finally going to see who's right. Naruto said, unsheathing his katana again. Aoi took the initiative, closed distance with the genin and started to attack him with horizontal slashes. Naruto opted to dodge the strikes rather than engaging the Jonin in a clash of swords. Naruto's small frame finally paid its benefits as the genin was able to dodge the first wave of attacks easily, but wasn't able to find any opening for a counterattack. After being initially outmaneuvered by the Jinchuriki, Aoi started to throw more incisive attacks and with increased speed. As he faked a horizontal attack to Naruto's torso, the genin prematurely propelled his own body backwards, giving the renegade the opening he needed as he brought his sword in a diagonal upwards attack. As the attack was coming from his left, Naruto could only extend his katana, that he held in his right hand to timely block a would-be fatal strike to his chest. But then Naruto felt a numbing sensation in his right arm, which slowly propagated to the rest of his body. Naruto then cursed his stupidity. The Raijin no Ken is a Raiden chakra blade. Metal conducts electricity, it's like I've put my finger in a power plug. A extremely potent power plug that certainly has more than 220 volts. Naruto then did the only possible thing he could do, drop the katana. As he did that, the numbing sensation became less extreme but was still present. Aoi got the best of his reflexes and threw a left-handed punch on the genin's stomach that rocketed Naruto backwards. Aoi took the chance to kick the katana. Naruto dropped out of the cliff into the sea. Bastard, that katana was expensive, 10,000 ryo. Naruto said, getting up and coughing a bit of blood from the punch. I can't be hit by that sword again, and I can't just dodge strikes. Futon is strong against Raiden, but I doubt I can create enough distance to fire a futon, Shinkugyoku, wind release, vacuum sphere. To keep things worse, my arm keeps trembling from that strike earlier. If I could only prevent him from using the sword. Then an idea came up to Naruto's mind. Man, I'm a genius, or a idiot, maybe a bit of both. Naruto mused, grinning inwardly and quickly developing his plan. As Aoi walked towards him, Naruto got up and picked a kunai from his holster using his right hand. Gotta see how useful my arm is right now. Throwing the kunai, Naruto was surprised as he felt all the numbing go away. The kunai reached a remarkable speed and emitted electricity before getting Aoi off guard and slicing his right biceps. That was Raiden chakra. I have 3 elemental affinities. Naruto pondered, surprised by the development of the fight. Bastard. I'll get you back for this. Aoi yelled. Anyway, I have to check this with Asuma-sensei and Hokage Gigi later. Right now I only have 1 strike. Naruto then withdrew the 2 chakra knives that Asuma gave him as a present. He readied himself before jolting towards Aoi, ready to end the fight, for better or worse. As he charged forwards, he could only clearly see Aoi thrusting the Raijin no Ken towards his heart, but in a somewhat slow motion. It seems that the Raiden-infused attack had some effect on him. Naruto now crossed the imaginary line. He knew that after passing this point there was no way to dodge the sword. He then infused chakra into his knives and directed his left one in a diagonal strike towards Aoi's right forearm whilst he raised his right knife hand into the renegade's open guard, targeting his exposed neck. Naruto realized that he wouldn't be able to reach his target and poured chakra into his knives. Heen, flying swallow. Naruto felt a hit landing on him and the sound of something landing on the ground, then he felt his vision fading and knew no more. The remnants of Team 10 speeded towards where Naruto engaged the enemy. With Shino's Kikaichu and Hinata's Byakugan, they easily subdued the enemy and managed to return an unharmed Ide to the Wasabi estate. They were surprised to meet Asuma halfway through as the bearded Jonin managed to convince the T-daimyo to attend the race and, worried about his team, managed to be back earlier. Hinata had her Byakugan activated the entire time as she was extremely worried about her longtime crush. When Hinata loudly gasped before fainting, Asuma and Shino knew something was not right and the Jonin promptly caught the passed-out Hyuga heiress. Shino, full pace ahead. The bearded Jonin said, not worrying a bit about hiding the concern out of his voice. In those 2.5 months he trained Team 10, he began to see Naruto as a friend and truly a son in all but blood, so if anything happened to the blonde genin when he was out he wouldn't forgive himself. The team sprinted for more 3 minutes before they reached the scene. Naruto laid in a sea of green and red. The green came from the grass that covered the cliff. The red was blood. Asuma then glanced further, to the source of the blood. The dead corpse of Aoi Rokusho, or what remained of it. His head laid in a corner, separated from the rest of the body. His right arm was sliced off diagonally and laid in another separated corner. The rest of the body, mainly the torso and the remaining 3 limbs, was laid on his back, with blood freely flowing from it. Asuma lived for 27 years, 17 of which as a shinobi. He completed over 700 missions. A true shinobi. During all those years he saw some shit. And hailed by his experience, Asuma looked at the scene. Now, that's some up shit. He even felt a lump rising his throat, and had to control his urge to vomit. The ever-stoic Shino Aburame didn't had the same force and promptly got to his knees and started to throw up. Asuma kneeled to check Naruto's condition. The blonde genin was a bit pale and probably took a slash at his left ribcage. The attack didn't reach any vital points and the Kyuubi had already healed the cut. Asuma could only tell that Naruto was hit as he noticed the cut at the boy's clothes. Naruto suddenly opened his eyes, and saw Asuma kneeling beside him, with a passed-out Hinata in his back. Turning his head left he saw Shino vomiting in a corner. "Hey Asuma-sensei," he said to the bearded Jonin, trying to get up, only to be stopped by the man. "Lay down Naruto, you can still rest, good job by the way," Asuma said using his free hand to lit up a cigarette and offered it to Naruto. "Thanks," he said accepting a cigarette. The cigarette became both a bonding thing for the duo and also a ritual of sorts to Naruto to get over having to kill someone. And whilst Naruto still was against killing mercilessly, the past month showed him that this was part of the job. "Hey sensei," Naruto said, getting the attention of the Sarutobi. "This Aoi guy had a bounty on his head, can I take his body to a bounty station? I kind of need the extra money." "Yes you can, but I think only his head will suffice. I'll seal it in a scroll and then use a Kaden jutsu to burn the rest of the body," Asuma explained. Naruto slowly got up and picked up the inactivated Raijin no Ken from the ground. "Sensei, what about the sword? I'll need to report that I recovered it during the mission." "Well, Konoha's laws are contradictory in this case. Whilst they require for you to return any item that belong to Konoha, they also allow you to keep the belongings of any missing ninja you defeated. I think you should talk with my father about that. But I won't report it on the mission report. If that happened, the elders and the civilian council would start pestering my father about it. Probably demanding that we gave it to the stuck-up Uchiha too," Asuma explained, making joke about Naruto's dislike for the last Uchiha. "Yes, that would be bad. The only use he will have for the sword would probably be as an electrical dildo," Naruto said, causing Asuma to chuckle. Deep in the background even Shino began to chuckle. "Now Naruto, being serious for a moment. Good job taking the leadership role while I was gone. You balanced your self-confidence, the trust in your teammates and tactical intelligence to figure out the best way to carry this mission, even if it meant putting out your own life in line. I dare say that you carried this mission as a chunin rather than a genin, and being your teacher makes me proud," Asuma said. "Thanks Asuma-sensei, this praise coming up from you means the world to me." "Now," Asuma said, shifting his glance between Naruto and Shino. "Let's clean up this mess. If Hinata saw this she would faint again, and I don't want to carry her, again." Asuma joked, but deep inside he was being sincere. After fighting Aoi and the AIM genin, the rest of the mission wasn't that hard. They kept escorting Idate, and despite their early clash, Naruto became friends with him, going as far as training with him sometimes. The land of T Daimyo attended the race personally and witnessed the Wagarashi attempts to sabotage Idate's progress, being stopped by Team 10. The daimyo noticed that one of his ministers was plotting alongside the Wagarashi and ordered his prison and disbanded the Wagarashi family, giving the control of Dagarashi port to the Wasabi family. Team 10 decided to return to Konoha after the celebrations, where they were hailed as heroes of Dagarashi port for helping the town get rid of the corrupt Wagarashi family. Idate gave Naruto 2 scrolls, one that he should deliver to the Hokage and one that he should only open before he takes his chunin exams. As they left they couldn't help but smile, knowing that the town was going to be under good leadership and they played a major role in this. Naruto was thinking on the same lines. If I need to kill, to bring peace and stability, I'll become a killer. I'm not happy about it, but if it is the cost of the peace, I'm more than willing to pay it.